Govinda. Okay. There's some magic. There we go. Okay. Everyone's familiar with Bhagavad Gita. Anyone not familiar with Bhagavad Gita? More or less, but familiar. The topic this evening is Gita values. And I'm going to give a little history behind how Gita values came into being. Once upon a time, the person who was to become the GBC chairman, named Shesha Prabhu, had no job description. I became the GBC chairman, and lo and behold, there's no job description. I mean, there is now, but there wasn't one. I did something different than what Shesha did. Besides scratching my head, I went to somebody who I looked up to as being like a very capable, qualified manager and organizer and visionary. And it was Rabindra Swarup Prabhu. So I asked Rabindra Swarup Prabhu, what should I do? I didn't say what's my job description. He said, you think of the world, and what's really important for the world, you give energy to that. You deal with stuff, but what's really important? And you do that. So I took him seriously. I got out the globe, turned it around a few times, and my eyes fell on China because, even then, China was on the rise of politics and economics and population and everything. And during that particular time, there were 2 GBCs for China, and neither of them could be in China. One of them because of his health, Giridhari Swami, the other because he was blacklisted getting a visa to go into China. So there's no GBC presence in China. So I thought, that's something I should do this year. So I started visiting China. And many interesting things have happened since then. And some years later, Shesha Prabhu became the GBC chairman, and he did something different. He consulted Brahmanas. What should I do as the GBC chairman? And it went around, there was a whole group of people, Oxford University professor, devotees, and then they brought in, frontline preachers and experienced GBC members, and so a team of some number, 8 to 10 devotees got together, and they started contemplating what should we advise Shesha, what he should do. And they came up with Gita values. And Gita values is meant to Gita is meant to give direction to how to live your life. It's also meant to give direction to leaders who give leadership to their life and give leadership to others, because leadership to others starts with leadership within one's own life. So they came up with, after deliberation and refining, there's a document which has not been circulated, but it can easily be circulated. They came up with 6, and then a short paragraph carefully edited again and again to say what each of those 6 Gita values are. And I think what I'll do is I'll send it to Yamuna, and you can circulate it however you circulate things here. Gita values 6. And to introduce the Gita values, here's a theme. There's spiritual culture and spiritual culture has values. So ISKCON, or a leader in ISKCON, or as a member of ISKCON, person who's living in the world, it wants to have a spiritual mission and a spiritual impact, then spiritual culture and its values. So that this is Gita values, but we're going to look at culture, because values is embedded in culture. There's a nice devotee, maybe some of you know, Konteya Prabhu has a PhD in organizational development. It's a nice thing to have a PhD in. And this image came from him. So I want to give credit where credit is due, because that's leaders are supposed to do that. Give credit where credit is due. So, iceberg of culture. And when teaching organization development, it's one of the things that any organizers of an organization need to do. They look at the culture of the organization. There are different images, but I like this one. Iceberg of culture. So in an iceberg, there's three parts. The most obvious part is what's at the top. Above the surface of the water, there's visible things in an iceberg. So in the iceberg of culture, it's behaviors, norms, things that you can perceive, maybe even measure, come in contact with the senses. That's culture. A culture, a group's or organization or an individual's culture is those things, observable things. And then just below the surface of the water is the big part of the iceberg, and that's stated values. You know, like, for example, a mission statement. When Prabhupada formed ISKCON, what did he do? Before he even formed ISKCON, the League of Devotees did the same thing. Made a statement of the mission. You know, it's common mission statements. What is our organization about? What would we like to achieve? What's our stated values, our official beliefs, and what we stand for? So, stated values. And values drive behaviors. Behaviors can modify values. There's an interplay between, but our focus is on the values part. And then at the bottom of the iceberg, there's assumptions. Just organization development. So there are certain unchanging, implicit realities. Like for us, we're spirit soul. There's spirit soul within everything that's alive. Or there's a source of one source of everything. Implicit. Values might change. The assumptions, the unchanging realities never change. And you put the three together and you have the iceberg of culture. And in Bhagavad Gita, this is discussed. The persons who presented this Gita Values project took this into consideration, and they're focusing on the values part, so that's what we're going to do. But Bhagavad Gita has some fundamental wisdom, and Bhagavad Gita also has information. Now there's a few people whose background is from India. Somehow this happens like that. So I know for a fact, I wasn't there, but shortly after it happened, there was an educators meeting, conference in Delhi, maybe 10 plus years ago. And the keynote speaker was asked to address the audience about education, specifically education in India. So he said, I wasn't there, education in India today can be summarized in 5 words. Information, Information. Information. No transformation. And the message was, we're failing. Because real education is not just information. Information, okay. But building character. And transforming the lives of people to be persons of character, persons of substance, not just carrying information. It can process information nicely. So the result of that, at the 3-day conference, as I recall, they issued a proclamation, hear ye, anyone that can provide curriculum for our modern education system, and they called it value education. They didn't want to say spiritual. Now with the new prime minister, they probably would say spiritual, but then it was value education. So it was, and if you could provide a good curriculum to help education in India today provide value to life, then they give some reward, and then they would actually teach it in schools. So a number of devotees got on board with that, and they provided curriculum, value education curriculum, based on Bhagavad Gita. And that's part where the idea came from for Gita values. I mean, not just to educate the chairman of the GBC, but a leader is to educate by example others. They'll lead by example. And there's an implicit understanding that there's a gap the image is meant to show where we are and where we want to go. And generally, where we are is very distant from where we want to go. And sometimes there's a big gap in between. And you're wondering, how am I going to cross that big gap? It becomes intimidating or so many different other responses. I learned a term from Satchidananda Swami. I like giving credit where credit is due. So Satchidananda Swami, I learned this phrase, liminal space. He was using it in terms of japa retreats. We're over here, we want to be over there, and there's a big gap between where we are and where we want to be with our chanting. Welcome to the club, right? And he calls that liminal space. So I looked up the word, and liminal is, it's a Latin word. Limen is a Latin word, and limen means space. For example, in architecture, a liminal space is like the place where Lord Nrsingadev killed Hiranyakashipu. Neither inside nor outside. Or a hallway. Neither, so it's neither this or that. It's just a space. Or a patio. Like we're in a liminal space right now. We're neither inside nor outside. We're kind of outside. We're not exactly outside either. So, liminal space. Or in carpentry, I learned it from a devotee. I asked, commonly, when you come in the entrance to someone's house, for sure it's in bathrooms these days, there's a little piece that shows in between, the outdoors and the indoors. It's called the limen. Just to give you the idea, liminal space is a discomfort zone. It's kind of like being a teenager. You know what I mean? You're neither this nor that. You're somewhere in between. And it's to cross that in between space can be uncomfortable. But the good news is, Krishna is there. Krishna will help us. So that's the key message to the whole of Bhagavad Gita. So now, going to this topic, this first of the 6 topics, they identified with Samadarshana. And again, you'll get a digital copy of the 6 Gita values and the little paragraph that goes along with them. But samadarshana, equal vision. And there's a little bit of a challenge for equal vision because in the world in which we live, it's a place of differences. For example, there are different kinds of fruit. I've never seen a tree that looked like this. But, different fruits on the same tree, but different fruits, different insects, different birds, lots of different birds. I can hear one singing just now. Near the place where I'm staying, there's this bird that sings. Oh, there's a chorus of them. I found out today it's a dove. Woo, 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 woo. I don't make the sound so well, but different birds make different sounds. And they look different. Different species of aquatics, different species of animals. Then there's the voracious, carnivorous animals, and so many differences. The world in which we live, variegated like anything. And then amongst another species, that's the human species, lots of different colors, different languages, different thises and that's, and styles and dresses and flags, and again, so many differences amongst the human species. And then take one person in the same event, there can be different reactions from different people. You get the picture. It's a world of many, many differences. Different forms, different people, different situations, different exchanges. So how are we supposed to have equal vision in the world that's so diverse? Challenge. Fortunately, Bhagavad Gita has the answer. And the graphics are meant to show down at the bottom right is the key, and the upper left is a lock that's in the shape of a heart. You fit the key into the lock and you got the answer. So Gita's idea of equal vision speaks of the equality of all living beings. This is one of the visions of Samadarshana. Life is respected regardless of the differences, because the fundamental is the life that's within. I've been asked to speak on a topic that this slide is also used tomorrow evening at Stanford University. Samadarshana, but not the topic is going to be different. The approach is going to be different. But so there's a fellow, hand on his chin, wondering about life. And he sees different species, and not only the species, but you see all those sparks in the sky, those living entities too. And within everything that's alive, there's some commonality. There's Samadarshana. What's that commonality? There's a soul within. The eternal, unchanging spiritual energy. That's the Samadarshana foundation. So most people, their consciousness is in the external, and that's the differences place. There's differences among spirit souls also, certainly, but those spirit souls, they're all part of the same supreme source. And that's what this graphic is showing. Not only the souls are there, but the expansion of super soul is within the heart of every living being, side by side. So that's the spirit soul, that skinny guy. That's us. And characteristics, eternality, knowledge, and bliss. And there are different images and graphics that show the same thing, but here's one I like. We're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And here's a little same way, the same message expressed in a different way, This is a fellow being interviewed on TikTok. So there on the left is the fellow, on the far right, that's the interviewer.
Who I am and what I am is not my body. It's not even my personality. It's not the trauma I suffered. It's not what I've been through. That there is a little spark of the divine inside of me. There's hard data that shows around mental health and well-being that having serenity, meaning, purpose, the losing of oneself to a transcendent self of the divine increases greatly the quality of we're a part of something much greater and much more beautiful than ourselves. And in living in that state can greatly enrich your life.
And the guy doesn't have a bead bag. No T-lock either. But same message, because it's an eternal truth, a fundamental spiritual vision truth. So there's different ways of doing the following. This presentation is for a college audience that may not. Let's do it a little differently. Well, I'll just follow what the slide says, but then there's an interactive session that I'm going to ask you to do, sharing, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, little groups, and sharing. Okay. This is called Feel Your Soul Meditation. You got to get in a meditative state, but you've been around Vaisheshika Prabhu, so I'm sure he does stuff like this with you guys. Get into a meditative state, Prabhus. Yogis. Take a few deep breaths. Seriously. Close your eyes. With your inner senses, feel your feet, your lower legs and thighs. Move up to your stomach area, your whole back, and then your chest and arms, your face and head. We've just met your body, but you're the viewer of the same. And now the mind. In the mind, there may be some thoughts or emotions. Usually there are. And we're not the thoughts and emotions either. Now try to be present within yourself, the seat of consciousness, the soul. Take a slow, deep breath and come and sit inside your heart. You're a spirit soul connected to divine grace. Slowly, softly, gently, we'll chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra aloud. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama. Okay. Now, that's the soul. You just been introduced to who you are, not just a friend, but who you are. The soul who is powerful, pervading, and gives life to both the gross body and the subtle body. Now you can open your eyes. We're going to see the screen again. What's the size of the soul? According to Scripture, the size of the soul is the upper point of a hair divided into 100 parts, and again, each of such parts further divided into 100 parts. Each such part is the measurement or dimension of the spirit soul. Svetasvatara Upanishad. So that's pretty small. Subatomic. And each soul is animating each body, whether the body of a squirrel, the body of an elephant, the body of a bug, the body of anything. The size of the spirit soul doesn't change. And Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says the same, different places in Bhagavad Gita. Here's chapter 15, Bhagavad Gita. Shrotram chakshu sparshanam cha rasanam granam evacha adhishtaya manaschayam vishayan upasevate. Translation. The living entity thus takes another gross body, attains a certain type of ear. You gotta look at the screen to see the elephant ear. Eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. Thus, he enjoys a particular set of sense objects. In lower species, there's a prominent, each one of the senses is more particularly prominent. In the human form of life, all five are prominent, and they're pulling us this way and that way. Come and enjoy, come and enjoy. Even in different bodies, every living entity is an amazing spirit soul. Surprise, here's another Bhagavad Gita verse. Chapter 3, text 38. Consciousness is covered. Consciousness is covered by the illusory energy. Mode of ignorance, covering, is compared to the embryo covered by the womb, like a tree, deep ignorance. Passion, compared to the mirror covered by dust. And some humans are a little bit more in the mode of goodness, compared to fire covered by smoke. The modes of nature influence the material energy. The material energy acts to bewilder the living entity to identify with the differences as opposed to who we really are. So who we really are, that's the Samadarshana topic. Therefore, there's the verse from Bhagavad Gita, the humble sages, that's you folks, especially you, because you want to announce yourself as humble. Humble sage. By virtue of true knowledge, as opposed to information. See with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana cow, a dog and dog eater, all the same. What's going on? It's going backwards. This vision awards, this is not Bhagavad Gita language, it's conventional language. Personhood to all, links everyone with the divine grace, just like that TikTok speaker was using the same language, the divine grace, and consequently with each other. Equal vision begins with seeing ourselves as what we are and seeing other living entities as who they truly are. It's a small thing and it's a big thing. Because if we can't understand who we are, how we can understand who somebody else is? And if we don't have an understanding of who we are and who somebody else is, how are we going to have a relationship and how are we going to feel satisfied? The answer, we won't. And when you don't feel satisfied, you feel frustrated. There's a lot of frustrated people in the world. Just a little sharing. I travel every now and then, maybe more than I should. In the course of my travels in the past 3 weeks, I've encountered 4 families where a dear member of the family committed suicide because it was too much. You know, the background story is a little different from each. One fellow gave me a description of how he was feeling that feeling without the detail, and he started running up the stairs to jump off the roof of a tall building. And he said, something stopped me. So he was still around to tell, but it's just frustration is not uncommon. Stress, negative emotions, etc., 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 etc. Somebody just sent me something from a Christian teacher. It said the fact that we are not feeling satisfied tells us there must be another place because we want satisfaction. Anyway, this isn't fulfilling our expectations. Our expectation is we want happiness. It's just of the nature of the soul. We want happiness, and this isn't a place of happiness. So we're feeling something's missing. If you're honest, something's missing. So know yourself. Here's a little Prabhupada story. I wasn't there, but Satsrup Maharaj was there, and he told me the story. At 26 2nd Avenue, there was the beginning of the Hare Krishna movement in America. Of course, the beginning was Prabhupada and his coming and his ordeal before there was 26 2nd Avenue. But there were some persons that started coming. So they could rent the storefront, and they got a little room for Prabhupada in the back. And every 3 nights of the week, for 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours, kirtan. Prabhupada spoke from Bhagavad Gita. More kirtan and prasadam. Generally, this was a standard. Kirtan would go, because I've been listening to recordings of these kirtans, 20 minutes, but it got to be 2 hours. And it got to be so ecstatic, the devotees were up and dancing. I mean, he didn't tell them to dance, they just felt ecstatic. So one fine day, Brahmananda, who was a big devotee more than one way, he was like the leader of the 26 2nd Avenue group. He one time asked Prabhupada, is it okay? This is so nice. Can we take this out into the public? And Prabhupada said, I was just waiting for you to ask. He said, yes, but you have to get a permit because I don't want to have a problem with the police. So they got a permit for Tompkins Square Park. Maybe you've seen the videos. They didn't have mridanga and kartals, but they had cymbals, like, big cymbals, and a bass drum, boom, boom, boom. And walking along the street, heading for Tompkins Square Park. There's video of it. And then they got to the park. They sat down and went have the big drum and things. But Prabhupada chanted for 3 hours in the park. And by the end of 3 hours, Satsrup Maharaj was saying, there's a crowd of people. And they were wondering, what planet is this guy from? Is he going to speak in Martian or something? It was the quizzical curiosity look on their face. At the end of 3 hours, Prabhupada stood up. Maybe you've seen the photo. He's with his arms folded in front of him. In the background is that steeple of a church. And over on that side is the elm tree, that's a celebrated place that they chanted under. It's still there, that elm tree. And Prabhupada's words. So drum roll and trumpet blaring, and you're a world acharya in the making. The first time you're going to speak in public, what are you going to say? Here's what Prabhupada said. I wasn't there. I've not come to teach you something new. I've come to remind you of what you have forgotten. Cool, huh? Let's say it again. I've not come to teach you something new. I've come to remind you of that which you have forgotten. And he spoke something for Bhagavad Gita. It wasn't long. He knew his audience. They didn't have capacity to hear long, so he just brief, invited them to the 26 Second Avenue storefront for more kirtan. And they started prashaded him. So, know who you are. And then, if you know who you are, then it makes it possible to have something of a sense of who another person is, and then you can have equal vision. Because not just other persons, but other entities. Samadarshana. So here's, you'll do this as a discussion. This is going to be an interactive conclusion to our time spent together. I don't know if you do that here, but I do it lots in groups. So some challenging situations where you feel that you cannot see different people with equal vision. Or flip it around. One person in your life with whom you have difficulty now or in the past, it says write it down, but I'm not going to ask you to write it down because you don't have the material for writing it down. So think about it. And then what are you going to do about it? To get, the liminal space. How do you get to the Samadarshana position? So I'm going to invite you to take 5 minutes, 3, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Pick somebody nearby, 2, 3, 4 people, and have a little chat on that topic. With your inner vision, consciously see that person as spirit soul, no matter how they may have behaved externally. Easier said than done, but see beyond the temporary. On your mark, get set. Whoever you're comfortable with having this conversation. Okay, try to wrap it up. 1 minute. Okay. One of the ways to find out when it's time to end is some heads start coming up and they're finished. Well, some of you want to keep going. Some are already stopped. Did you remember to bring them up or shot them? No, I don't need it at the moment. just before I go. It's here? Okay. So don't go away when we're end because I've got some Mahaprasadam to distribute. Any discussion? Complaints? Questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So we were discussing about how do we practically apply the equal vision when you have to deal with the worldly things where you are actually, you need to differentiate. For example, if you work for a corporate company, you need to follow the hierarchy. There's a boss and there is a person whom... So as you said, we need to salute the boss and, how do we practically apply the equal vision at that
Spirit
stage?
soul. The boss is a spirit soul. And the boss thinks he's the boss, and he wants you to be subordinate to him because he's the boss. And then there's the boss of the boss. That's how. So we play our social roles.
So when you are saying the equal vision, it's only at the soul level.
Yes, there's differences on the external level, and we honor them as we honor the soul. But equal vision. Here's this, a nice one. There's many nice ones. Ram and the squirrel. So a nice one is Prabhupada's making a statement I like. The Brahmana is doing the puja and offering the arti to the deity, and the humble servant is coming in and cleaning the floor. So from Krishna's vantage point, they're equal. Externally not equal. From Krishna's spiritual vantage point, they're equal. It depends on because the person that's performed the arti, their consciousness can be in the gutter while they're offering the incense and ringing the bell. So it's the consciousness of the connection with Krishna. No. So we live in the world and we recognize their differences and we honor the differences. I can give other examples. When I go to China, I don't dress like this. And these days, I don't go to China because of what the government is doing. So it's just, for the time being, there's a pause on going to China. It's just practical. We're the boss and we don't allow religion in our country, so don't come. And anyway, without the details of what they're doing, they're the boss. And there's a style of being the boss. Different in the corporate sector, there are different managers. And then there's the owner, and then there's the board, and then, and then there's Krishna. So when we're serving, who are we the servant of? And we're respectful of the differences, but we must be, to be Krishna conscious, we must be conscious of the person who we're serving, ultimately. And now, how is you, as a member of that organization, the corporate organization, how can you impact the core Krishna consciousness of the boss, the guy in charge who thinks I'm the boss? Maybe, not much. But there are things that you can do that's you're carrying your Krishna consciousness into the workplace. And subliminally, at least, or more, by your character and quality, etc., 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 etc. So that your service to Krishna includes that. along with the practical maintenance of family and so forth. We respect differences, even on the physical and the mental. We discern and discriminate between one thing and another thing, but not the negative kind of discrimination. Okay? Pandita Samadarshana. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the wonderful class. My question is this something that we cultivate as devotees, the Samadarshana, or is it something that we kind of get at a certain point? And how do we kind of practice Samadarshana amongst devotees?
The first question, I'll separate them. The first question is, let's take it aside from the Samadarshana, but any virtue or good quality, do we cultivate or do they just descend? And the answer is, there are scriptural statements that say both, so it's both. Bhakti has the power of Krishna. And the power of Krishna has a big warehouse. And he can decorate his devotees with nice qualities. He does decorate his devotees with nice qualities. So it just depends on Krishna's decorating you with nice qualities. It's descending. And on the other hand, it's intrinsic. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunoi Shravanadi Shuddha Chiche Karyayuda. So the essential quality of the soul is there, dormant, just needs to be awakened. So is it to need to be awakened or it needs to be received? It's both, not either or. The essence of bhakti is what? Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam. Krishna should be pleased. I'm an aspiring bhakta, and what I want, if I'm true to my life as one cultivating bhakti, I want Krishna to smile. And when Krishna smiles, that's his happiness is my happiness. That's the pure state, but that's his happiness is my happiness. So if I can treat others with this equal vision, Krishna will smile. So I cultivate it. But the cultivation is that Krishna will smile. And then you don't go the other direction. Like sometimes not. Sometimes not. So then comes your question, how to have Samadarshana with devotees. And it's similar, it's different, but similar to his. We recognize differences. Somebody's this and somebody's that. Somebody's the other thing. And a fundamental feature or characteristic, lakshana, of Samadarshana is respect. Say it negatively. Without respect, something's missing. With respect, so it's respect for what? You look up to. That's respect. So the soul. Amongst devotees. It's a good question because it's a common understanding it's simple intuition. Relationships are everything. And we want association of devotees because we want relationships. By nature, we want to love and be loved. So we come together with devotees, but somehow there's some behavior or speech that's not to my liking. Now, what do I do? I'm with the devotees, and they're so important. And then if I come to, so it's respect. If I come together with devotees and I start showing disrespect, that's going to be my problem, not their problem. Disrespect. So maybe I just should be without devotee association, because then it won't make that offensive. Disrespect. That's not the solution. So respect, fundamental. So how can I respect? So then you look at the soul and the characteristic of the soul. The soul is part and parcel of Krishna because of respect to Krishna. Someone's behavior may be unpolished. Now, what about me? Do I have unpolished behavior in speech? For sure. And so does another person. So now should I fail to respect them because they're not polished? No, you discern. This is a person who I want to become close with because they have some good characteristics, a good quality, good character, good speech. They're very sensitive in their social dealings. And I'm not so great at it, but I see there's other persons that are great at it, or they're consistently really good, at least. So we associate with like-minded persons. This was a question that came up in the previous place. What does it mean to associate with like-minded persons? So we make association with those that are naturally birds of a feather flock together, with like-minded persons. But even those that are not like-minded, and even those that are like-minded, we respect the fundamental and do your part in your relationship with that other person to be their well-wisher and whatever it is that's in your power to help them make the next step. Whatever it is that for them is the next step. I'm going to share one other little thing, and it's if I forget, Dimona is going to remind me. There's one of the things that I've done for a number of years, maybe 35 years, is visit Gita Nagari, conducting retreats in Gita Nagari. That's on the other side of the country from here, so many of you probably heard it by name, but you don't know what the place is. But it's a place where Bhakti Tirtha Swami made it his base, Gita Nagari. Here's a little adding. When Prabhupada came from India to the West, he came for two reasons. Two explicit reasons: to give his association to his disciples in the West, and to help establish Varnashram. And the target place was Gita Nagari. You know that history? When Prabhupada left, he didn't make it to Gita Nagari. He got as far as England and he had to go back. And there's some details. But that was his so Bhakti Tirtha Swami took up the mission of helping fulfill Prabhupada's vision for Gita Nagari. I'm getting off topic, but it's fun. I hope you don't mind. Once upon a time, Srila Prabhupada was a Gandhi follower. And at the departure of Gandhi, Prabhupada was asked to be one of the principal speakers, not necessarily the keynote speaker, but one of the principal speakers. So he spoke that a way to honor a great person is not building a statue, naming a building, naming a street. Those things are common. The best way to honor a great person is to create a place that demonstrates the values that were held by that great person. Since Gandhi was a great follower of Bhagavad Gita, that place should be known as Gita Nagari. That document was found in a trunk, along with many other documents that Prabhupada had kept safely, like Light of the Bhagavad that never got published. And later, it was given to Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and he published it, Light of the Bhagavad. It's a long story. So the Gita Nagari document was found later, and it was in ISKCON proclaimed as the Gita Nagari prophecy. So that was the blueprint for Bhakti Tirtha Swami to establish Gita Nagari as the place where Prabhupada wanted Varnashram to be manifest. And he was really serious about it in his own powerful leadership way. So after he departed, I would stay in the institute houses, where he stayed, because I liked the ambience. I like the sense of being connected to Bhakti Tirtha Swami and his personality and his mood and his wonderful, wonderful person. Wonderful, wonderful person. So on the wall, there was an answer to your question. That's why I'm going to all that story. A friend is something like this: one who knows who you are. They accept you for who you are. They know where you've been, and yet they gently help you to grow. That's how we behave in the association of devotees. There's differences. And some are this, and some are that, and some are over there. Respect, and gently help devotees to grow, not fault find or condescend or envious or none of those things. Just gently help them to accept and help them to grow. That's how we behave in the association, with respect towards here's amongst all the souls, defective, okay, but they're trying to work their way toward Krishna. Let me respect their mission and their fundamental identity. It's easier said than done because there's always stuff. And it's our conditioning. It's not the other person, it's our conditioning. What's fine for another person may trigger us. It's our stuff, not the other person. Okay. Anything else? There's a large assembly here. And as the temperature's dropping quickly. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So when somebody is situated in the topmost level of devotional service in Uttam Bhakti, for him the external and internal are same. But somebody who is situated in the middle level, who is trying to cultivate in the pure devotional service, he need to behave based on the external situation also.
Of course, yes. I mean, that's his question. You honor differences.
But for the Uttama Bhakta Maharaj, we see that they don't actually consider.
They're not required to, but they may act as if. To show by example, like what Prabhupada did and many others did.
Thank you, Maharaj.
I'm hoping one of the ladies would say something. Brave soul.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. One question about equal vision. So when we see, sometimes not in our personal life, but we see news of injustice and, people conducting some violent activities, theft, etc. In that situation, how do you have equal vision and the same Samadarshana for a person who conducted those activities? And maybe they are not directly related, but it affects on, when you see those. Yes.
Two things. A really nice example I meditate on regularly, is Yudhishthir. Yudhishthir knew exactly the diabolical behavior of Duryodhana. And he knew exactly that Dhritarashtra knew all the things that he did before he did them, because that was the relationship of son to father. And Dhritarashtra looked the other way. He was accomplished to murder or attempted murder, multiple. And yet when Yudhishthira came before Dhritarashtra, he offered him all respect. Why? He's bad. Because it's cultural. He's elderly, he's blind, he's older than his father. He's to be respected culturally. Now, internally doesn't mean that he closed his eyes and couldn't see, but behavior and speech was very respectful, commensurate with his position. It's easier said than done, but a cultured person can do like that. And we're not so cultured, right? So we sometimes growl and do other things.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Oh, wait, I wanted to give one other response. I can think of two other responses. One is a Christian saying, hate the sin, not the sinner. It's making a distinction between the soul and the behaviors. So you you should not lose your power of discernment. This is this and that's that. This is proper conduct, that's not proper conduct. This is proper speech, that's not proper speech. Don't lose. The protection for you is bhakti. Don't lose the position that I want to be a servant to this soul. Now, how are you going to be a servant to the soul that did bad stuff and said bad stuff and does it consistently? That's not an easy question to answer. But don't depart from that position because of circumstance. Here's what Prabhupada said, and I'm going to go to the next. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj told me this. Long story, make it short. He grew up in a ghetto. His family was destitute. During our era, this generation that I'm a part of, it was a thing of the time that Ivy League schools offered free tuition to qualified black people from the ghettos. Bhakti Tirtha Swami got full scholarship to Princeton University. He became the president of his class and the valedictorian of his class. He was a luminary. And during that time, luminaries were on their way to the stars. I mean, he was stardom. He was, great career, etc., etc. Something happened. A group of us from New York that were doing college distribution of books. And we went to Princeton and he got a Sri Upanishad. And that was it. He left that stardom and became a Hare Krishna guy. About a year passed, he told me this. He came to Prabhupada after he was initiated and said, he was really uncomfortable. I want to share this with you. In the Hare Krishna movement, there's racial discrimination. And Prabhupada's answer blew his mind. His answer was, that's not good. And you're being disturbed by it. You're no better than they are. Racial discrimination. You're identifying with the body and feeling this and feeling that because of identification with the body. You're no better than they are. Give up the bodily conception, Bhakti Tirtha. So there's an answer to your question. Go beyond, the darkness into the light, and stay there and be in service to that person who does bad stuff and says mean stuff, and it's not nice. It just doesn't have to have behavior. Doesn't have to be nice to be that you stop. You refrain being a devotee. You lose it because of circumstance. It's easier said than done, but that's what to do. It's stay with bhakti, grow bhakti.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for coming and thank you for a wonderful class. My question is similar to other couple questions. So my problem personally is, even though reading and knowing, but especially when we associate with like socially meat eater or breaking four regs, and when we try to have a keep distance, we want to keep distance. At same time, it is very hard to have an equal vision to them, at least for me, that I feel like, oh no, I don't, I try to, the judgmental thought comes, and I know it's not good, but it's very hard. So practically,
What to do?
Yeah, what
to do?
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Your question is answered by Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan mission, because it's the dark age of Kali. And the Bhagavatam and Lord Chaitanya's teachings are the same. The light of the Bhagavat. What did Prabhupada do when he came? Read, I invite you, read his nice prayer aboard the Jaladuta to Krishna. And you enter into the same mood. But you brought me here. The little girls, they're motioning. See back there? She wants something else. Maybe she wants daddy or something. In daddy's arms, everything's okay now. So that's what to do. And so the tendency is one thing, but you have a mission. You've been given a gift, and you use the gift. And even in circumstances, your assignment is not to be judgmental. Your assignment is to be an instrument. Now, it may be difficult, that's okay, but that's your assignment. That's this liminal space thing. And Krishna will help you. Just stay fixed on what your mission is. Somehow or another. I am meant, and so you do what Prabhupada did. You have kirtan, you speak the Bhagavatam, and, be a person of ideal character, and slowly, 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 because these persons are victims of the age. You know the verse. You know many verses. Kaler doshinat he rajan yasi ekam hanganan kirtanadami eva krishnasya mukta sangha pramrajat. Okay, I think I'm going to end, and I'm going to distribute some Mahaprasadam, and it's starting to get a little chilly. You probably have stuff that you're supposed to do tomorrow. I know I do. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Yay.